I'm very excited about this week's episode as I'm talking about personal responsibility for both our health and success, as well as the dangers of the body positivity message with my special guest, Gina Bontempo. Now, Gina is both a health coach and the manager for outspoken author and talk show host Candace Owens, and you're going to want to hear what she has to say. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Hunger Hunt Feast. With me is Gina Bonatempo. Welcome, Gina.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Gina is manager for Candace Owens. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Candace Owens. We'll talk about that a little more as we get into it, and a fitness and health coach, which is more kind of in line with how I connected with Gina on Instagram. And I love what she's posting. I need more of what she's posting in my life, which mobility and stability, balance, as I gotten older, but also in just taking responsibility for your health, your life. You know, I just really was drawn to your what you were posting, and as I got to know you through that, in that way, as you get to know people on social media, but just really felt like I wanted to have you on just to have a conversation. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm happy to be on because I think we have been following each other for a little bit on Instagram and always agreeing with each other and liking what each other is posting. So it's nice we can finally connect this way.
Absolutely. Now you have quite an interesting background, right? Or eclectic, I should say. So you were a religious studies and piano performance major at Emory, which great school, amazing school down in Atlanta. And then you got a master's in theological studies from Harvard.
Yeah.
Which is not like, depending on where you're coming from with theology, you know, Harvard's not always the first thing you think of with theology, right? Yeah. So, and then you got in the health and fitness space, and you were an editor for a mainstream media company or a digital media publication. So that's eclectic. I mean, you've got a variety of skills and interests. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I was all over the map for a little while. I think I was the quintessential wandering millennial for much of my 20s. I went into college actually as a math major because I was always really good at math.
Wow.
And piano was a big thing in my life growing up. I mean, I started playing at the age of 5, and I was performing at a very young age. So piano was my life too. But I think I always knew I didn't want to make piano my career because it's such a cutthroat industry. And I knew I didn't want to be a performer for life, but I did want to major in it in school just to keep it going. So I originally went into school as a math major and a piano major, but I was struggling with the math major because we were getting into physics and it was just really difficult. And I honestly, part of me wishes that I had stuck with it because it would have, my life turned out wonderful and exactly the way that it should have been. But at the same time, my career would have looked very differently if I had gone down the math and maybe engineering path. But so in my sophomore year, I actually switched majors kind of late. In my second year of college, I took an elective course of religious studies. And I don't know what it was. I just really fell in love with the topic and with the subject and found it so interesting that religion is one of the only things that people will willingly go to war over and die over, and how closely it really related to politics. So I think it was one of those rash college student decisions that I just switched majors. And at the end of school, I didn't really know what I could have done with those degrees. I wasn't ready to really go into the workforce full time. So I applied for graduate school programs. And that's how I ended up at Harvard for a Master of Theological Studies, because their divinity school is one of the only officially non-denominational divinity schools in the country. But that is really where I turned woke. That school.
Oh yeah. That doesn't surprise me, actually. Harvard. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And that degree program just really sent me down a rabbit hole of the intersectional ideology. And I was taught that the white man was the root of all evil in America, and that being white meant that you were racist, and that America was founded on racist ideals. I mean, this isn't a theology program that I was being taught this. I took a class in my first year at Harvard called Race, Ethics in the U.S. Prison System.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And first of all, I don't know what that has to do with theology, but it was, it was a class where probably 16 people would sit around and we would just talk every day about how racist America was and how Black people were oppressed. And it really, it's very difficult to go through that kind of program and not come out the other side in agreement with them. And
Hmm.
I grew up in South Georgia. I grew up in a small town outside of Savannah, Georgia. And I grew up in a very traditional, just an all-American home.
Hmm.
My mom's family are immigrants. They're from South Korea. My dad born and raised in America, but we were just like a patriotic family that, my parents weren't necessarily diehard Republicans, but they were conservative
Sure.
and they loved America. And they taught me that America had the greatest opportunities to offer in the world, which it does. So I grew up in a very, conservative Christian home. So going into college and graduate school, I thought, because this is how they teach you, I thought that I was finally waking up to what was really happening in society. I thought that I was finally having the veil pulled back at what was going on, which, is the opposite is true. You're just being fed lies. um,
Right.
so it was in graduate school that I really fell into the wokeness. And I came out of graduate school a very angry feminist. I was
Hmm.
convinced that women were oppressed, that Black people were oppressed. And I was even convinced, as I called myself a woman of color because I'm half Asian, that all minorities were oppressed in America. And, when I left school, I was, like I said, I was angry and I didn't know really what else to do. So the first thing I did after graduating from graduate school is I went into a yoga teacher training program. And then I sort of entered the health and fitness space from there.
Hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
it's a lot.
That's a lot. But I mean, you were searching. That's clear you were searching. That's why you were open to those ideas. That's why you're open to Harvard. I mean, you were looking for truth, or you're looking for your path. And so
Yeah.
that happens. I mean, when we're looking, especially in that age, when we're in our 20s, we're seeking, we're open-minded. Um, and sometimes some things have influence over us that kind of make us question our base level ideals.
Yeah.
But that I think that's just part of growing up. I think
Yeah,
that's
I think so too. And then,
testing those.
yeah, and I think that's okay. I actually think it's, it's good for most kids in their 20s to go off and search and wander and ask questions, because
Yeah.
ultimately it brought me back to my core beliefs and it brought me back to the conservative Christian base that I have now. I don't recommend everyone to go have the same exact experiences I did. I mean, after I graduated from Harvard, I went traveling a lot. I lived in Australia. Spent a lot of time in Peru, Bolivia, Chile.
Wow.
I was also in Thailand for a while, and I just spent a lot of time going around to different countries, which actually in the end made me appreciate the United States so much more, because you see the opportunities that we have here and the kind of life that people have around the world. And, we hear this talk of white privilege. It's got nothing to do with the color of your skin. Americans are the most privileged people on the face of the planet
Yeah.
ever in the history of the world. We are just so privileged. And the fact
Absolutely.
that we have time to sit around and talk about white privilege, I mean, that in and of itself is a privilege, because most of these people around the world are just trying to find where their next meal is going to come from.
Right.
Most of these people don't even have the same freedoms and liberties and rights as we do. So, it's almost like a blessing and a curse of being so free in America and having so many luxuries that we have the time to sit around and talk about white privilege. You know what I
Yes, I hear that. I hear that quite a bit. So and it's hard for someone to, like me, old white guy, to say something, about that without it just seeming very self-serving. You know what I mean? So that's why I think another thing that attracted me to what you're posting is that you and your manager, Candace Owens, really speaking about this from the point of view of a minority woman, you know, because who needs to hear from another old white guy? So, about that. So I try to stay in my lane, but sometimes I sneak out because it's just like, it comes down to self-responsibility,
Yeah.
personal responsibility. And we do have opportunities here that no one else has. There are some Western countries where you have parallel opportunities in some way, but the level of efficiency in this country, the development, the
Yeah.
innovation, technology, it doesn't compare. It just doesn't compare. The lifestyle does not compare. I spent quite a few years traveling around Europe, and a little time, short time Middle East, like Israel, but it was mostly Europe, and it was, there's things you just think when you're a kid, when you're young, you're like 20 something, you think everything, you've never seen anything else. You think everything's kind of like America. It's just a little, like you have the same conveniences, or you have the same opportunity. You don't really realize what it means. Like you said, when you come back, it makes you appreciate what's here, and you realize why everyone's trying to come here. If it was a terrible place, we have so many immigrants coming here who have a different shade of skin than I do, and they're still trying to get in, despite the fact that there's plenty of people like me here.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity is here. Not that there is no racism, but it's certainly not it's not impeding people from succeeding.
That's right.
In a way that would be scaring people away.
Yeah.
And in any degree, we have millions from like over 1 million people just from Nigeria who have moved here, and have become quite successful. Asians are thriving here. Not just people who have been here for 3 generations, but people are coming here and they're thriving because of a work ethic.
Yes.
And it's refreshing to see younger people and people who are not, who don't look like me, appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think you nailed something on the head there that I find to be really interesting, is that if you look at the statistics, if you compare the success of Black immigrants versus the success of American-born Black individuals in America, everything is different, from how much salary they earn, to their spending habits, to the rates of obesity, to the marriage rates, divorce rates, the way that education, the degrees they get, how they perform in school. And so the lie that we're told that Black people are oppressed because of the color of their skin, that can be debunked simply by comparing the cultures. And this brings me back to what we're saying about how Americans are so spoiled, and we don't even realize how spoiled we are, that you have these immigrants, Black immigrants coming from Africa, Caribbean immigrants, they come and they absolutely crush it in America. They do so well. They're healthier, they get better jobs, they get paid more, they get married more, and they stay married, and they have more children. And, they have the same color of skin as American-born Black individuals, but they have chosen to take advantage of all of the opportunities that America has to offer. Especially I like to talk about the obesity rates. There is now you see stuff online. I mean, I actually saw something last year where on some talk show, a group of Black women were talking about racism makes you fat. And that's why Black people suffer from obesity more than any other ethnicity in America. Well, that's not true, because if you look at the rates of obesity in Black immigrant communities, it is significantly lower than American-born Black individuals, significantly lower. So it really does come down to personal choice and responsibility. What are you going to do with the opportunities that you've been given? What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to choose to take advantage of? Because these immigrants come to this country with little to nothing. A lot of them come in here and can't even really speak English fully. And yet they work harder than anybody else in school. They work harder than anybody else in their job, and they can really rise above. And that's why I think it's really disappointing that we've gotten to the point where Americans believe that our country is racist. I mean, we take in half of the world's immigrants every single year. One country takes in half of the world's immigrants every single year. I mean, a racist country would not do that. So I think it's worth looking at these statistics. It's worth comparing the cultures, because what we actually see is, and Candace talks about this all the time, it's the breakdown of Black American culture that has produced a lack of success, that has produced high single motherhood rates, and the rates of Black kids dropping out in school so rapidly and getting involved in crime and gang violence. And it really comes down to the breakdown of Black American culture specifically. Who are their idols? Their idols are Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, Jay-Z, And they don't have these idols to look up to that encourage them to make good choices and do well. These idols encourage them to be trashy, to be sexually promiscuous, to not be concerned with school or concerned with your career. And you combine that with the breakdown of the nuclear family, which especially in Black America, it comes down to the Great Society Act and the welfare system that was instituted in the 1960s. After that was instituted by Lyndon B. Johnson, the rates of single motherhood skyrocketed because mothers were incentivized to not marry the father of their children. So they wanted to be single moms because they received more money from the government. But what happens when you don't have fathers in the home? A child without a father in the home is, I think, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 12 times more likely to commit a crime, 18 times more likely to go to prison. I mean, the statistics are really harrowing. And that's why we see such high rates of crime and high school dropouts in Black American communities, because the breakdown of the family and the breakdown of the culture has resulted in kids just being put on a path to make bad choices. And I think it's such a disservice to lie to them and tell them that it's because of racism. I mean, I actually think that is racism in of itself, to lie to them and to pander to them and tell them that, oh, it's not your fault. It's because of the white man is holding you down. Why wouldn't you want them to do better? If we actually wanted people to do better in our country, think about somebody in your life that you love, whether it's a family member or a friend. If you wanted them to do better in life, would you lie to them and tell them that somebody else was causing their problems? No, of course not. Because if you actually cared for somebody, you would be honest with them and help them move forward. And that's why it actually makes me so upset when I see these, the left, they lie, and these politicians pander to Black America and saying that they're struggling because of racism and white supremacy. They are flat out lying to them. And that's such a disservice, because they're stopping them from actually taking advantage of what is in front of them and taking advantage of everything that America has to offer them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, and that's obviously the theme from Candace Owens. And so if anyone doesn't know, like, first do a Google search and you'll have your supply of information. But, with her book, Blackout, she's pretty much led the Blexit movement, the movement of Black Americans out of the Democratic Party into a more, at least a conservative point of view, or conservative, thinking. And she has her own show coming up here on the Daily Wire, which is very exciting because it's going to be here in Nashville.
Yes.
Which means you'll be moving this way as well.
Yeah. We're really excited about that. It's going to be kind of a late night talk show, in front of a live studio audience. They're trying to make it more like an Ellen or an Oprah, but, from more of a conservative perspective, and a show that really celebrates American values and ideals. Because one thing that conservatives kind of get wrong, we really get wrong sometimes, is we don't go in at culture. We don't work hard to change the culture, because yes, conservatives are, because if you think about like the traditional conservative, they got the suit and the tie and they go to the conferences and they're all about politics. But I mean, what affects young kids today? What changes young kids' minds? And it's the culture. It's the celebrity culture, entertainment, media. That's what has the biggest influence on young people today. And that's what Candace really understands. There's something very cultural and kind of like cool about Candace. And she wants to bring the show that she's doing with Daily Wire to make it fun and accessible, and not some stiff, boring political podcast where we're going to do interviews all the time. She wants to have a good time. And that's actually something that most people don't know about Candace, is that she is one of the funniest people I have ever met in my life.
Oh,
you
really?
You would not think that.
No, you would think she's pretty darn serious. You just don't
exactly. Yeah.
It's like, I'm not crossing her. No, she's she's quick on her feet. She's quick on she's quick to respond. She can, you can't get one around. You don't kind of catch her off guard.
Yeah.
And that's what I see from people who have tried to. So I can see how she'd be quick-witted as well. That would make sense.
Yeah. And she always has to fight when you see her in an interview or being testifying before Congress, but she's actually just such a funny, lighthearted person. And so we're hoping to show that side of her in the show.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, she's being called, which is crazy to me, she's being called a racist.
Yeah.
Against Black people, of which she clearly, if you don't know, she is. And what she's doing is calling people, if you're a coach, for instance, like you and I are health coaches, we call people up to a higher standard. We say, okay, here's where you are. You're kind of stuck. Here's a plan to move you forward to where you want to be. But the plan you've been following, that you've been finding on, whatever your Google searches are, or the coach you've been listening to over here, or this, that's not going to get you there, because you're spinning in circles. And that's why it hasn't worked.
Yep.
Let's move you up. Let's change your plan and move you in a direction that's going to get you where you want to go. And she's taking that on culturally to help people financially, and how to improve their lifestyle, improve their career, where they want to go, their education, but through the mechanisms that are already in place, without a handout, without move away from the welfare state, essentially, is what you were talking about before with Lyndon Johnson putting things in place that incentivized single parenthood, incentivized single families, and she's saying let's move towards what is already here, take advantage of it. It's all available.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of having a perspective, open your eyes to taking a hold of it. And there's so many things in place now to allow for minorities to really take advantage of, whether you agree with them or not. There's plenty of doors open. And I admire that she's willing to, she doesn't have to, but she's willing to stick her neck out to do that. And she's being attacked by even white people calling her racist against Black people. And it's just completely nonsensical. When all she's doing is trying to call someone to a higher standard.
Exactly what it is.
And that's where she's come from. Yeah,
exactly. People don't know this. She came from poverty. I mean, Candace grew up in a roach infested apartment. It was like a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 or 3 other siblings, and she had to share a bedroom with her 2 sisters, and she grew up with nothing. She came from nothing. And this is, she talks about this in her book. She talks about it in interviews. Her father was an alcoholic. He wasn't abusive, but he wasn't present and a father figure. And her mom was abusive. Her mom was psychologically abusive to her and the other children. And today she unfortunately doesn't have a relationship with her mom. And so her saving grace was her grandfather. Her grandfather saw what was going on with his grandchildren. And he says, I can't see my grandbabies grow up like this. So he moved them to North Carolina to spend most of their childhood with him and his wife, her grandmother. And it was her grandparents that really showed her the way. And they were, the figures for her that led her to make changes in her life, because she was on a bad path. And so people think that, they look at Candace now, she is so classy and she puts herself together well and she's beautiful. People just assume that she was born with a silver spoon up her butt. And they think because she speaks very eloquently, and she sounds intelligent. So they just assume that she grew up in a very wealthy family and neighborhood, but she came from nothing. And that's one of the reasons why she fights so hard. I forgot what interview it was, but somebody asked her, they said, Candace, do you hate Black America? Do you hate Black people? And she says, no, I actually love Black people so much that I am willing to fall on the sword for them, that I am willing to take the bullet for them and say things to them that nobody else will. And I so admire her for that. I think that is, it's very brave. But what's funny is that when people say, oh, you're so brave, Candace, you're so brave for what you do, she says, I'm not brave. She says, I have the easiest job in the world. She says, all I have to do is speak the truth. That's all I have to do. And so, I believe that she is really one of those people that is gifted and anointed to deliver a message that nobody else is willing to deliver right now. I think she's really talented.
So she is really self educated her in her beliefs, in her approaches, because she speaks, like you said, eloquently, but she also speaks intelligently. Like, she knows her statistics, she knows her figures. And so she is, I think, basically educated herself in that, in what she espouses. So she was not taught that growing up. She was brought to a better place by her grandfather, but these are not ideals that she grew up with at all.
No. Yeah. I mean, her grandfather taught her Christian values and taught her how to respect and stuff, but it was really, she is someone who's self-taught. And another thing that people just don't know about Candace is that she is constantly reading and growing, because she really makes it a point. Because she said once, she says, where are the Black intellectuals? She says the last remaining Black intellectuals in America are Thomas Sowell, and I think he's almost 90, Larry Elder, and he's, I think in his late 50s. She says there are no younger Black intellectuals that are really leading the way. Someone he doesn't have a huge platform yet, but I think he's great. Coleman Hughes. He's an extremely intelligent young Black guy who, he's not necessarily conservative. He's a bit more moderate, but I would call him a Black intellectual for sure. But other than him and Candace, there's really nobody else. So Candace is always reading. She's always educating herself. She always says that she wants to be the dumbest person in the room so she can learn a lot.
Right.
And I think it's that attitude and that sort of humility and understanding that she has to keep growing and learning if she wants to continue delivering something that's useful for not only the Black community, but for America as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. It's listening to her has turned me on to read a couple Thomas Sowell books as well. And it's like, it's just common sense. It's not necessarily geared towards minorities. It is just, it's common sense. It's basic economics in many cases. That it just shows you it's for Americans. It really is. It just shows it can enlighten any American or someone who's questioning what they have here. That will open your eyes. Any one of his books will open your eyes to the opportunities we have here and the advantages we have here simply by living in this country.
Yeah.
So how did you? Okay, so you were this woke Harvard student, working somewhat in media, you're in yoga, you're traveling around.
Yeah.
And then you were somehow red pilled and connected with Candace. What caused you to kind of like open your eyes and kind of not just come back to where you were raised, but really become more involved in a movement?
Yeah.
Like you are.
That's such a good question. It was 2017 when I moved to San Francisco. So I had been doing the sort of nomad wandering lifestyle for a while. And in 2016, I was actually deported from Australia because I had been working on a tourist visa, whatever, but it was a good kick in the butt for me. And I think it was a moment where God said, you're done. Stop traveling, go back to America and figure out what's going on with your life. So I did. And so I ended up moving to San Francisco and working for a digital media publication there. And I was a fitness editor. But it was at that time that I started to, someone encouraged me to watch one of President Trump's speeches in full. No edits, no clips. They just said, will you watch this speech? And at first I said, hell no, I'm not watching that, because I thought he was racist and a white supremacist, but something compelled me to watch the whole speech. I think he was speaking in Ohio. I forgot exactly what speech it was, but I watched that full hour and my jaw dropped to the floor, because I realized in that moment that I was being lied to. And there's something that I can't explain, but I know for a fact that when I watched that speech, I suddenly felt a sense of safety. I felt a sense of safety for America. Like, this man actually cared about Americans. Like, this man actually cared about the state of our country in a way that I have never felt another president or politician cared about America before. And so that was the first moment where I started to say, something's not right here. And at the same time, I was seeing what was going on in San Francisco. And San Francisco is so far left. It is such a cesspool of homelessness and needles and feces. And just, it is a third world country in San Francisco. I mean, I walked around the streets of Peru and Bolivia and have not even seen what I have seen in San Francisco. And just seeing that in and of itself made me wonder, if this is where leftism takes us, there is something seriously wrong here. So that, combined with watching President Trump's speech for the first time. And then after that, I started watching videos of Candace, videos of Charlie Kirk. I was listening to some Dave Rubin. I was listening to a lot of speeches from a professor called Victor Davis Hanson, who I think he's at Stanford. I know he's in California.
Yeah, he's not a Merced. I grew up just miles from where he's based. Yeah, I know.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I know San Francisco. I used to go to San Francisco when I was in college just to hang out and afterwards. And I've been through there just a couple of years ago on a family trip. And it was like, whoa, this place has changed, because
I
it was,
bet
it was the 90s when I was hanging out there. and,
it was different
and
back then.
it was it, but you could still walk around and go out and have fun. It was a clean, and you just knew where to go and where not to go. You just stay out of the Tenderloin, and just, go, but you could go pretty much wherever you wanted on foot, and be fine. And it wasn't, you didn't see the level of, if you're going to say filth, that you
No.
see there now. And I'm not talking about judgment of people. I mean, it's just how the city is kept, how the city is run. It's
gross.
dirty. It's changed, and it's changed in 25 years, for
Yeah.
the much worse. And so I know exactly what you're talking about, but I know Victor Davis Hanson. Yeah, I grew up not too far from, he's Hanford. That's where he's based, but yeah, I think he does teach out of Stanford.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah. So you were listening to, wow, you just started consuming all these.
I just started. And you know what? I used to spend my Friday nights. I used to spend Friday and Saturday nights just watching these videos. I would sit in front of the TV. I would just watch video after video. I watched Dinesh D'Souza. I watched a lot of speeches, and I was reading some. And in
Wow.
2017, that was the year that I got red pilled. And I was still working at this digital media publication where at the same time I was being forced to write, to publish, to edit all of these posts and articles about body positivity. And everyone in the office was talking about how evil Trump was. I mean, of course, like every digital media publication, we had a whole team of people that were just on call to watch Trump's tweets so they could write something about Trump's tweets, and it was just such a liberal place where there was just no way that I could ever even, I was honestly scared to even say that I was watching these videos or even like changing my thoughts at all. And so
You should have been.
yeah, I mean, can you imagine? And what's so funny is that there was another girl in the editorial department who came up to me once, and we somehow became friends. And turns out she was conservative. And she said to me, she whispered to me once, she said, I am absolutely terrified that our boss might find out that I'm a registered Republican. And I was like, that's when it really clicked to me. I said, you and I are the rebels. I said, we are the resistance. The fact that we are in a major corporation, a major media corporation where we feel scared to speak up, we are the actual resistance. This is what's happening right now. And it really started to open my eyes. And then, so what I did was I stayed silent for about a year and a half. I didn't post anything online about being conservative or changing my mind, because I really actually wanted to give myself time to think and myself time to reclaim my values. And that was also at the same time that I started to come back to Christianity. I was reading and doing a lot of research on the history of Christ, and, finding out that there's more historical evidence of Jesus's life and his resurrection than there is historical evidence of my own birth. So all of these things were sort of coming together into one. And then in 2019, Candace started her podcast with PragerU, and she red pilled me. I would stay up at night and watch her videos on my phone with her and Turning Point and all of her speeches and stuff. And I just had this thought. I said, I'm going to meet her one day. I said, I have to meet this girl. And in 2018, was it 18 or 19? One of those years, I quit my job in media and I went into fitness full time. That was 2018, because I was so over it. I could not handle the hypocrisy. It really made me upset that the editorial director was removing lines from my articles saying that obesity was harmful to you in the long run. They were not allowing me to post scientific facts about the dangers of obesity. And I said, this is so messed up. I actually got so angry. I said, you claim to want to help women live a better life, and you will not even let fitness editors write that obesity is harmful to you. And there were even some times where, we had another writer who would write about menstrual health issues, PCOS, endometriosis. And they removed lines in there that said you can treat menstrual health issues with a diet and a natural lifestyle. They would not even let us publish that.
Whoa.
Yes. Yeah. It was like they wanted people to rely completely on big pharma. They wanted people to be fat and unhealthy, and they wanted to wrap it all in a pretty pink bow and say it was liberation and freedom. And that is when
Wow.
I said, enough of this. I said, I cannot do this. So I quit my job. I went into fitness full time. I was training, doing, personal training sessions it was a great gym in San Francisco, but I was quiet. I didn't say anything. And then in 2019, I said, I'm going to just reach out to Candace. So I sat down and I tried to guess her email. I said, I know that Candace probably hates body positivity as much as I do. I've never heard her talk about it, but I can just tell that this woman despises the movement just as much as I do. So I guessed her email. I must have gone through 10 different emails. I got all these bounce backs. And I said, you know what, maybe it just went through. And so I wrote an email saying, hi, Candace, you don't know me. I said, I watch every one of your episodes on PragerU. I said, you've never had anyone on to talk about the dangers of modern feminism and body positivity and how they are decimating women's lives. And I said, I would love to come on your show and talk about it. 2 months later, her assistant emailed me back and said, I think Candace would love to have you on her show. Can you come down to LA to film? And at this point, I was like, okay, I can die happy. I'm going to be on Candace Owens' show. I was like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. I was so excited. I called my mom. I was just so excited. But what was kind of sad at the same time is that there was really nobody else in my life that I could share the big news with, because all of my friends were liberal. All of my friends would have thought that she was a white supremacist. So I was secretly
the black white supremacist.
A black white supremacist.
Black female white supremacist.
Exactly. So I was harboring this great news, and I went down to LA in September of 2019, and I filmed the episode with her, and it went really well. We hit it off. We were talking afterwards, and I brought my fiance at the time, was now my husband, with me. And, we were talking to Candace about how much we hated San Francisco. And I left and I was happy enough. I said, this is just incredible. I got to sit down and have a conversation with Candace Owens. 5 days later, she emails me and she says, what are you doing? She says, do you want to leave San Francisco? She says, because I need a manager and I think you might be a really good fit.
Oh, wow.
And I was...
I would have been, I would imagine you got a pit in your stomach. Like,
I got such a pit in my stomach. I didn't even tell anybody about the email for 24 hours. I didn't even tell my fiance that I could not. I thought it was a dream. I thought I was dreaming for 24 hours. But what it was is it was just a God moment. It was one of those things where God put me in that moment at that time and allowed me to be there with Candace. And Candace saw something in me. She saw something, and I will be eternally grateful to her for giving me a shot. And next thing I know, 3 months later, we're moving to DC. And January of 2020, we're in DC, and I'm working for her. And here we are now. And it has been a wild ride. I honestly, and all of this came from a cold email. And this is why I tell young girls, I'm like, if you want something in your life, nobody will come give it to you. Nobody will come give it to you. You have to reach out. You have to be tenacious. I mean, that is a tenacious thing to do, sit down and guess somebody's email. And there was one time where I was at PragerU filming with Candace for her own podcast. And I met Dennis Prager. He said to me, how did you start to work for Candace? And I told him the story. And he said, do you know how rare that is? He says, you know that you got here because of a cold email. He said, nobody responds to cold emails. And I said, I know. And that solidified to me just like what a moment it was. And this is why I always tell young women, like, you want something in your life, you have to find a way to go out and get it, because nobody's going to give it to you.
Yeah. Oh, that's the truth. You learn to ask. You learn to take the initiative to ask for something, even if you get told no 10 times. It's that one yes will open a door for you, but you'll never know if you don't ask, and you'll never hit that. That's amazing. So I just recently, it's funny you mentioned the body positivity. I think I just put one of your tweets in a story on Instagram that was about, men wouldn't put up with this, fat acceptance, obesity, crap. They wouldn't believe it for a second. They're like, I'm not going to stay fat. If they can not be fat, they're going to do something about it.
Yeah.
However long it takes them, they know it's not okay to be fat. Yet we had, I know you saw the Cosmo covers that came out just several months ago, that were just two different covers that were two obese women dancing like they were ballerinas. And it was, this can be healthy. The headline was, this too can be healthy.
Yeah.
and you basically said in the tweet, this body positivity is garbage. It's just, it's telling unhealthy, like you said, unhealthy lies. And finally in the news, we're seeing the statistics, and they're finally covering the health side of the pandemic of COVID.
Yeah.
With the visceral fat, the studies showing, increased visceral fat caused more hospitalizations and deaths. The high, which many of us in the health industry have been posting about, but the biggest comorbidities were obesity, type 2 diabetes, and hypertension.
Yep.
That's all diet related and all reversible with diet.
Yep.
And lifestyle. And so how to keep promoting body positivity and obesity when there's clear evidence that the virus that has shut down the world essentially has entire countries in lockdown, and destroying the economy, that it's driven by, it's given greater access to our bodies through obesity. It's very simple. It's the ACE2 inhibitor. It's insulin. But it's still okay to be obese.
Yeah.
Not because you're a bad person, not because you look bad in your bikini or your jeans, but because you're playing with your health. Your health is at risk.
Yeah.
And it's not just when you're 50, you might get a heart attack. It's when you're 30, you might get a virus that puts you in the hospital and on a ventilator, immediately. And so I'm boggled by how this is okay. I mean, we were in the 80s, and 90s, it was super skinny, and we overdid it with the fitness, and there's probably some fat shaming, and but we've swung too far.
Yeah. And
it's true that it's really much stronger in the female the messages to women.
It is.
Women. Which is now even being questioned what that means.
Which is, what is a woman? Yeah. But I think this is one of the reasons why I think that women have become accepting of the fat acceptance movement. So, I think it's ridiculous that we're now in a time where people refuse to acknowledge that men and women are different. Men and women are wired differently. Have you ever met a man? Have you ever met a woman? We are completely different species. And our bodies are built to do different things. So our brains are built to do different things. Absolutely. And I think one of women's strengths, and this comes through nurturing and being a mother and caring for children and family, is that we have a very high emotional IQ. We are very compassionate. The way that women hear babies crying is very different than the way that a man hears a baby cry. A man might be like, but a woman hears a child's cry and says, is my baby hungry? Are they in pain? Are they uncomfortable? So the way that we relate to children and to others, the way that we relate to people in general is different than men do, because we are built to be that way. And that is one of our strengths. However, that strength can be our downfall. Women can be overly emotional. Women can think with their emotions before logic. Because in many cases, when it comes to family in the home, the woman has to think compassionately, especially when it comes to children. We have to. That's what we need to do. But that can sometimes be our downfall when it comes to policy, when it comes to things that we need to change in society. We think too much with our emotions. So when we see body positivity, what's happening is that they're conflating looks with health. Yeah. So they have made body positivity out to be, you're fat, you're still beautiful, honey. No matter what anyone tells you, you're beautiful. Yeah, fine. A woman can be beautiful at any size. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But we're not talking about looks here. We're not talking about beauty. We're talking about health. We're talking about longevity. We're talking about being someone who is going to be present for your family. You have to be healthy to do that. And so I think because women are so much more compassionate, we buy into body positivity, we buy into mass immigration, we even buy into abortion more than men do, because we think first with our emotions. We think, oh my gosh, well, I don't ever want to make someone not feel beautiful. I want everyone to come into America and have a good life. I want women to be able to have their choice. You can't stop a woman from having her choice. And we think with our emotions first without actually thinking about the outcome, because intention is very different than outcome. So the intention of mass immigration is to give people, everyone, a chance at a better life. But unfortunately, having open borders has incredibly detrimental effects on our country, incredibly detrimental effects, which is one of the reasons why Trump was so successful in 2016, because he dared to address this issue in a way that no politician had dared to before. So women often, we stumble on our own compassion and we stumble on our own emotions. And that's the only reason why we have come to accept obesity as the norm. And on top of that, we are more insecure than men are. Women statistically struggle more with insecurity than men do. That's just sort of part of how we're built biologically, because for women, we're constantly having to compete for the male. We don't think so. We don't think we are, but subconsciously we are constantly having to compete for the better male, for the alpha male, so that we can, have someone to have a child with, right? Someone to raise children with. So we tend to be more insecure. And that's not something that I just pull out of thin air. I mean, if you look at any survey, any research that's been done over the last 100 years, women are always much more insecure. We're more agreeable. We're more compassionate. Again, these are our strengths in many ways, but at the same time, they can be our downfalls. Just like men being more arrogant and aggressive, that's your strength, but sometimes it can be your downfall. Absolutely. So I think that's why we've come to this point where women are accepting morbidly obese women on the cover of magazines, because we are too compassionate and too nice to say that's wrong, and to say that woman is eating herself to death. I mean, I think it was probably in 2018, Tess Holliday. She's just a woman who is fat, and she got famous for being like 400 pounds. And she's on the cover of Cosmo wearing lingerie, just so morbidly obese. And she frames it as like, I'm beautiful either way. I'm like, honey, yeah, you're beautiful, but you're going to die soon. And you're not even going to be there for your son or your kid's daughter, whatever she has. And so I think that's why we're in this place where fat acceptance would never fly with men, because you guys are like, if a dude is fat, you'd be like, bro, you are fat, dude. Get to the gym, quit eating burgers and drinking beer. You can say that to each other, which is one of the reasons why men don't really hold grudges, but women hold grudges. If a girl told a girl she was fat, oh my gosh, they wouldn't be friends for like a whole year. We are wired completely differently.
Yes.
We're wired very differently. So I think this is why the body positivity movement has landed with women.
Yeah. And the thing is that cover, it said healthy, this is healthy. Can this be healthy? It was around health. It wasn't just about beauty.
Yes.
And so it's gone past like, we're not fat shaming, or yes, you can feel beautiful. Yes, you're a good person. It's not about, we're not saying you're a terrible person. It's gone all the way to this can be healthy. And that's completely crossed the line into, like you said before, what you're talking about before, we're lying to people. We're lying to people to get them to do something that whoever's lying to them wants them to do, whatever they want. They want them to buy into something. There's a purpose behind it.
Yes.
And the lie is that you can be healthy like that. You can be as beautiful as you want like that. You can be as accepted by your friends and your spouse and your parents as the human being that you are, but you're still not healthy. Yeah. And that's where it's crossed into where you're lying in the face of science. You're lying in the face of biology and medicine. And we're seeing it play out. And despite the fact that the message keeps going, we're seeing it play out right in front of us with the pandemic, with the COVID pandemic. So if it's not evident now, I'm not sure what would, but it feels like there's just an ignoring of facts, ignoring of truth to get this message across.
And one of the reasons I think we're there is because people don't realize this. And I know this from having worked in the industry myself. People do not realize how much money media companies make off of body positivity. Why do you think they push these false messages? Do you think it's just to create chaos for the heck of it? No, they make a ton of money off of body positivity, because the more woke body positivity content that they post on their sites, the more advertisements are bought by woke corporations. They will buy so many more. If you advertise more body positivity and fat acceptance, we can sell more of these fat clothes. So do this and we'll buy more advertisements. And these media companies make so much money off of body positivity campaigns, because what do the media companies make money off of? They make money off of clicks and views. So
Right.
all they're trying to do is get you to click on that site and get you to click on this. And what makes you click? Shock value. Sensational journalism. That's what makes you click on things. So they're not releasing this information just because they feel like it. They're releasing this information with, it's a calculated, intentional thing. They are sitting in a room thinking about, how can we get the most clicks and views? How can we get the most people watching these stories and these posts and clicking on the websites? It's because they want to make money. So this is why I quit, because I thought it was heinous and evil that all these people, what's crazy, Zane? What's crazy is that all the people at these digital media companies, none of them are fat. All the people pushing body positivity content, all of the people who are writing it, they all eat kale salads for lunch. They go to Soul Cycle 4 times a week. All they do is buy organic groceries. They would never be above a size 2 or a 4, and they take care of themselves, and they're thin and beautiful. But you be fat because you're so beautiful just the way that you are, while they're making tons of money off of it. So it's the hypocrisy of digital media. And it's the hypocrisy of the magazine industry, where you might have like one or two token fat girls who are working there, and some beauty director is morbidly obese, but it is incredibly rare. And so what you have are these people who sit up in their ivory towers, they make a ton of money, and they just think about ways that they can get people to click and to view their content so they can make even more money. And it's always the same thing: do as I say, not as I do. And that's what made me the most upset about working in media, is that they write all this content about abortion, but all these women, we would celebrate every woman getting pregnant and having a baby. Like, you have an abortion, but I'm going to have my baby. And they would write all this content about, you don't need marriage. Marriage is outdated and it's an archaic system. Everyone's married. They're all celebrating each other's marriages and having weddings and then having children after they get married. Obesity is beautiful. You guys should embrace your beauty. And they're all thin. They're all skinny. They're all healthy. They're all fit. And it's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. And these people, they lie and they lie and they lie just to make money. And what's really sad is that the people in low income communities, they have the highest rates of obesity, of course, than anybody else in the States.
Right.
But what these people don't have, they don't have the access to the same resources, the same food, the same education as we do. But what they do have access to is the internet. What they do have access to is social media. So all these digital media companies, they claim to want to help people live a better life, and they claim to want to help low income individuals do better with their life. And they are feeding them the very information that is going to make them worse, make them sicker, make them fatter, and make them more unhealthy. And that is something that I think every person should know. If you consume any digital media content, you need to know that none of them live the life that they tell you to live. None of them do. And I find that to be so disgusting.
Wow. Yeah. So they don't believe their own shill, obviously.
No,
and they wouldn't live that way because they know they'd be miserable.
Yeah, they know they'd be miserable because being overweight and being morbidly obese is miserable.
Yeah.
And they know that.
It's unhealthy. Yeah. And it continues to grow. And like you said, you PCOS, I know so many women who have reversed that with a low carb diet of some form, whether they do keto or whatever they did, they've reversed that through diet, and that because it's insulin driven. And the fact that you couldn't address that is, it's shocking. It's like, give a solution. You're going to point out a problem, but you need to offer the real solution, not just a pharmaceutical solution. But I understand that's who's paying for ads.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so they won't let us give women a natural remedy or a natural solution. And what's really sad to me, I was just posting something on my page yesterday about the dangers of birth control. it breaks my heart how many girls are in my inbox who don't understand that they can control unwanted pregnancy without birth control. I mean, I had girls in my inbox who thought that you could get pregnant any day of the month that you're not on your period. Like, they don't know about ovulation. They don't know that you only get pregnant on the days that you're ovulating. This is how much not only the school system has failed us, but how much these media publications are failing women. You know, you have all these health verticals, fitness verticals talking about how to live a healthy life. All they teach you is to go on birth control. They don't teach you anything about knowing your own cycle. I mean, so many girls in my inbox saying, how do I know? How can I control my cycle without birth control? They don't even know that there's such a thing called ovulating, and that they can know when they're ovulating just by understanding their cycle. I mean, it is really, really sad. And this is why, you know, the birth control industry makes people so much money, and the doctors will just shove, oh, you have heavy periods, birth control. Oh, you have severe cramps, birth control. You got PCOS, you definitely need birth control. Endometriosis, girl, you definitely need birth control. And I mean, I also have a private Facebook group where, you know, I've got all these people in there. We talk about health, fitness, politics, culture. A lot of moms, I have a 15-year-old daughter. What kind of birth control should I put her on? And we're like, no. I mean, I just had a girlfriend. She was on birth control for 15 years. She just got off 18 months ago. And she was telling me 2 nights ago, she has not had a more miserable year in her life, because when she got off of birth control, her like entire body shut down, because her body did not know how to have a normal menstrual cycle. She's only had one period in the last 18 months. She was having hair growth in weird places. Her testosterone levels was like 7. I mean,
It's too high.
Everything was so out of whack. So it was like,
Oof.
you know, birth control wrecks your body from the inside out, but women are just conditioned that it's just the thing to do now.
Well, it's synthetic progesterone.
Yeah.
It's Synthroid, essentially, which, if we're looking at the Women's Health Study, which is the biggest, or Women's Health Initiative, which was the biggest study done on women, and the first major study done with women in the 90s. It took us to the 90s to do a study on women's health for some reason. But when they did, when they looked at hormone replacement, they were looking at hormones, the effect of hormone. They were looking at menopausal women. But the thing is, what they found, their cancer findings, they linked it to cancer. And it was a synthetic progesterone that was really, it wasn't the estrogen. It was a synthetic progesterone, not bioidentical, that was linked to the health problems, the heart disease and the cancer. Well, that's all birth control is to make your body to some degree think it's pregnant, because progesterone is a hormone of pregnancy. And so that you can't get pregnant. You're already pregnant hormonally. But if you continue to supplement any hormone, like sex hormone like that, in your body, when you come off of it, I mean, it's going to down regulate your own stimulation or generation of it. So as she came off of it, her body didn't know how to make progesterone anymore. It had been down regulated. And so her estrogen and testosterone are like peaking to keep up with the progesterone she'd been putting in. I'm guessing is what happened. And so, like you said, she's out of whack. She's out of whack. Her body didn't know what to do. It's a terrible, to throw that at women as a catch-all solution is, in my opinion, malpractice.
It is. And they do it just to make money. And that's why, I mean, look, I'm never someone who just wants to bash all doctors, but it really concerns me how many doctors are at this point now where they won't even listen to you. They won't even listen to whatever your issues are. They just prescribe something just like that. They just prescribe something from big pharma and they shove it at you and they push you out the door. And and now I see why there are so many people who are pushing back against mainstream medicine, and they are pushing for more natural, more holistic ways. But those are the people who are called the conspiracy theorists. We're conspiracy theorists. Why? Because we don't think that 15-year-old girls should be shoved on birth control. We're conspiracy theorists because we believe that a strong immune system will protect us against COVID. We're the crazy ones.
Because we don't want to take a vaccine that we don't need.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Somebody asked me, are you going to take the vaccine? I'm like, no, it's simply because I just don't need it.
No, and I've been exposed to it several times with either clients or people that I know had symptoms the day after I saw them.
Me too.
I'm not, I haven't had a symptom yet. So
Same.
it's not, and I'm not saying that arrogantly. I'm thankful, but it's like I've made choices in my life for not because of for general health and longevity. And I say no to a lot of things in my diet, and I take time to, for my fitness, for health. That's important to me. I made it a priority. I spend money on it. We spend
Yeah.
money on one of our motivations as a couple. We want to make more money so that we could afford better food.
Yes.
When we first got married, and so it it's it has to be a priority. It takes effort. It has to be deliberate.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the payoff is the reward is you have health. I'm still, still moving with my kids, keeping up with them, and I'm 50, and it's like I'm still
Wow, good for you.
so, and my wife is
Wow.
too, and we're very healthy 50-year-olds, and I see other
Yes.
people who are not so much, maybe didn't make those choices. Now, yes, I'm in the industry, so but it's just because that's an area of interest, and I it has to be a priority. It has to be. It's not something that happens by accident. And
Yeah.
when you're in your 20s, you can kind of get away with some stuff. In your 30s, to start to maybe catch up with you a little bit. By
Yeah.
the time you hit 40, if you're not taking care of your health, it's going to kick your ass.
Yeah. That's
You
right.
start
Yeah.
paying for your sin. By the time you hit 60, you're going to start paying for those sins.
You really
I
do.
mean, you really are. And it has to be a choice. It has to be deliberate. You have to take responsibility for it yourself. You cannot rely on the medical system or the healthcare system.
Mhm.
If you can't see that after what just happened in the last year,
Yeah.
our healthcare system, not to criticize it, the people in the healthcare system work hard and they want to help people. Nurses and doctors want, by and large, they want to help people, but their system is flawed. The system they're working within is flawed. And most of them just want to show up, do their job, help people as they can, and then get home to their families and make a living just like everybody else does. It becomes a job. And so they do what they have to do to get through their job.
Mm-hmm.
But the system is flawed. The system is sick care. The system is set up to handle sick people. I don't want to be one of those people in that system.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
And
avoiding the system through personal choices.
yeah. And there are so many ways to do that, to stay out of that system.
Right.
And especially when I think about, I've been doing so much thinking now about pregnancy too, because I'm pregnant with my first child, which is
Congratulations. I had no idea. Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, we're so excited. I mean, I'm still in the first trimester, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes you think.
A lot of thinking in general, but especially a lot of thinking about the way that pregnant women, I've heard pregnant women talk in the past. And the majority of pregnant women that I've seen in the past sort of take the mindset, they kind of like, they use it as an excuse to let themselves go. Oh, I'm really hormonal. I'm really hungry all the time. I'm just going to eat whatever I want and think about it afterwards. And, I know I'm one of those women who has the first trimester fatigue. Oh boy, do I have that fatigue. And oh boy, do I have those food cravings. I mean, for the first time in probably years, I was driving home today and I was like, I think I could eat 2 Chick-fil-A meals right now. I passed by one I was going to UPS. I was like, I could eat 2 meals right now. And I tell my husband all the time, like, babe, I just want to eat everything. And so I know that feeling. I know that craving. I know the urges. But what's crazy to me is that when you are pregnant is arguably the most important time to make the right decisions.
Mhm.
The most important time to take 10,000 steps a day, to get some sunshine, to drink water, to eat healthy whole foods, to eat clean foods.
Right.
To stay away from the processed foods. And like, yeah, all I want to eat right now is like crackers and weird stuff. And I have
Cereal.
a little bit of, yes, cereal. Oh my gosh, cereal's the best with the cold milk.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I've been thinking so much about, God willing, when I get through the pregnancy and hopefully have a healthy child, I really want to speak more to what it means to be pregnant and to still make those healthy choices, even though you feel like throwing your feet up, being lazy, and getting fat. I mean, I thought about it. I was telling my husband the other day, I'm like, it would be so easy to just like get fat right now because it's like, you have every reason to. You're hormonal, you're tired, you got some morning sickness, you're growing a life inside you. So, you know, people should be waiting on you hand and foot. And it's just so easy to go down that path. But it is about the difficult choices that we make every single day that really adds up, because I'm the same. I don't want to be a sick person in that system.
Right.
I don't want to end up being someone who really can't take care of my children because I'm not healthy enough, or I'm not vibrant enough. And that all starts with the daily choices that we make. And it's tough and it's hard, and it will just get harder and harder. But when you get into the groove, I mean, I'm lucky. I have gotten into this groove for a while before. You know, we have healthy habits. We eat well anyway. So even though I have these cravings, and even though I have the sort of desire to go off the deep end, I've already instilled a routine. And it's so important to have that. So, you know, I've been thinking so much more about women and pregnancy, and how it's not a time to let yourself go. It's not a time to just throw caution to the wind and just eat and do whatever you want, because I see so many pregnant women do that. So many of them. And I'm not saying it in a judgmental way. I'm saying it as in, like, don't you want to be the absolute best for your child? Don't you want to give the best to your child?
Well, you're eating the building blocks for that child.
Yeah.
You're forming a brain, and you're forming an immune system and a body in there. And that there's a direct link to the health of children, you know, immune system, brain formation, by the food that you eat, the fats that you eat, whether you're eating processed food or eating real whole, you know, fats. I mean, the choline from eggs, you know, versus eating cereal, which has almost no nutritional value whatsoever. And, you know, you're creating a human that needs all the advantages it can get. And it's not just about being a thin, you know, pregnant woman. It's not about that, or even about how quickly you bounce back after pregnancy. It's not just that. Those are important, but you have to think about the child. What you're eating is forming its tissues. The proteins and fats you're eating are what's creating the tissue. We are made of protein and fat.
Yeah.
So all the tissue, the brain, the organs, it's every cell in the body is cholesterol and fat. You know, it's just that's what's creating your little person. You know, and what you put in your mouth. And if you think about that, what I put in my mouth is going to form the human I'm going to bring into this world. It might give you a different, you know, perspective on what you choose to eat. Not that you shouldn't eat, not that you should undereat, but you just make really good decisions about what it is that you eat. I mean, that's got to be vital to that child's future, to that child's health.
Yeah. And especially now, because this is the building block phase, the infrastructure phase. I mean, I was just reading that I'm week 9 right now. And that's when week 8 and 9 is when the brain is starting to form. It's like, it is such an important time. And I think it was in week 7, the child is already 10,000 times bigger than at conception, which is just crazy. I mean, that what happens in the first trimester is just so incredible. And that's when your placenta is starting to build up. You know, your placenta hasn't been built up yet. So it's really a crucial time. And,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I really hope that I can come out on the other side of this and encourage women who are maybe trying to get pregnant or who are pregnant to really understand that it's more important than ever. It's more important than ever to make the right choices every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we've kind of, I think that's the overall theme here, is like making good choices and taking responsibility for that. Not just because your doctor or your friend or someone online tells you it's okay to eat this when you feel this way, or do this when you, or everything's okay and you're just fine. Just do what you feel.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do. It's like your choices have outcomes and consequences that you're going to need to live with. And we have to take responsibility. And that's why I think, again, that's what drew me to so many of your posts, and why I enjoy sharing them so much, is because you're saying what a lot of people are thinking, but either they don't put it into words, or they don't have sometimes the boldness to post it because of, you know, various reasons. But it's because you can get attacked. You can get attacked for speaking
definitely
truth. And that's what you experienced in your in your job with a media company. You can be attacked for speaking the truth and for telling people what they don't want to hear, but what needs to be said.
What they need to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. I'm excited for you, man. You have a lot going on.
It's crazy. We still have to find a house in Nashville. Oh man, it's crazy.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I'm here. You need help. We've talked already, but I'm always here to help if you need something. And when that does happen, I can lift heavy objects. I'm good at moving.
Yeah, you're good at that. Great. It's good to know.
Yeah. That's how I made friends when I moved here. Is someone need to help moving? They're moving around. A bunch of musicians here, always changing places. I'll help. It's a good way to make friends. Gina, how do people find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at GM Florio. And then I'm also on Twitter quite a bit too at Florio Gina. I also have a website, gmflorio.com. You can visit that too.
Okay.
But those are the places where I'm at the most.
So what do you do on your website? Is that where you just kind of like a blog? Are you posting your ideas?
It's my fitness website. I haven't posted on my blog in a while. I need to update it a little bit more. It's kind of the thing that's fallen off to the wayside, but it exists. Same. It's there. Yeah. It's a hard one to keep up.
Yeah, podcasts are easier, fortunately, I think, but I can just talk. Well, I appreciate that. Definitely connect with Gina online. You'll love her posts, especially if you're in yoga, mobility, fitness stuff is like, it's stuff that I need more of because as I get older, I don't move as well. But it's as well as the ideas that you share. It's just like, it's refreshing. And I appreciate it. And I'm excited for you guys coming to Nashville. And
I can't wait to meet in person. It's going to be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I know you're busy and pregnant. I didn't know you were pregnant, but first trimester is like, it's challenging. My wife had 4. So
wow, 4. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a lot. She's had 4 first trimesters.
So that's like, a lot of first trimesters.
None of them were fun. None of them. None of them were fun. So anyway, but it's great. I so appreciate this. And I look forward to sharing this with people because I think this is such a important message, important topic for us to discuss. It covers all aspects of our life that we covered a lot of aspects of life because it's the same overreaching overarching message, which is personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And just taking hold of, making your choices to fit your needs, not just right now, but like look forward 10 or 20 years. And how is this going to affect you or affect your children? So Gina, thanks again. And I look forward to seeing you here in Nashville.
Thank you for having me, Zane. I appreciate it.